Session is about grant writing. So we've had our three wonderful CIs from the MoCRE, Leanne Hydes, Amanda Baker, and Peter Kelly, joining us today to provide their wealth of experience on grants, essentially. How to write grants, how they've reviewed grants, and all the wonderful things in between. So I'm sure they need no introduction. You all are well familiar with them, but just kind of spruiking their grant abilities. They all have received lots and lots of research funding. So I've seen over 50 million. And if we kind of combine it between the three, it'll be even more than that. That's just massive numbers that my head couldn't handle. So I haven't calculated it, but incredibly impressive. And they've received prestigious NHMRC and ASC fellowships in addition to research grants as well. So in addition to receiving all these funds, they've also been reviewers. So kind of taking on that aspect of reviewing other people's grants and fellowship applications, so they can kind of provide us with what really stands out as a good application and what doesn't quite pass muster, perhaps. So what we might start off is a really kind of orienting question to our panel, and then I'll open up to everybody else who has any kind of burning questions. Um, you can pop them in the chat as we go along, and I can ask those ones as well. But just starting off with the panel, I wanted to ask about what the major funding bodies are and funding schemes that we usually apply for within the substance use research field, and the difference between a fellowship and a research grant. I think this wasn't very clear to me towards the end of my PhD or early ECR journey, so I thought we would kind of start there.
I can have a start, make a start. So, what was the first bit of the question, Ian?
What are the major funding bodies and the difference between a fellowship and a research project grant?
Oh, so the nationally competitive research programs are the National Health and Medical Research Council, which covers kind of medical health-based research and a range of other types of research, but primarily it's in the name, health and medical research. Whereas the Australian Research Council, or the ARC, not so much into health. They've got very strong exclusion criteria for anything health related. Um, and it's pretty hard. I mean, you can get alcohol and substance use research funded through them, but you must be very focused on talking about it as a behavior and not infer any health aspects. So they're the major nationally competitive ones. But it varies by state level as well, essentially. And I guess with Pete and Amanda, want to add anything?
I guess I wanted to say early on that traditionally drug and alcohol grants are less fundable, if you like, to many reviewers than, say, other health problems like childhood cancer or something like that. There's still a lot of stigma associated with alcohol and other drugs. And many years ago, when I first started applying for grants, there was a specific round. I don't know if you remember that, Leanne, but they had money came in with the National Drug Strategy so that more research funding went into drug and alcohol. That's gone now. But it really speaks to how you have to build and write your grants because you're competing against very emotive sort of topics that are obvious to non-expert reviewers that we must fund this. So you have to, in writing grants, you need to sort of get in there with an emotional hook and get reviewers interested in your grant. Sorry, that might be a bit off topic, but we're
right.
in there with everyone competing for money, and you have to sell your idea as well as you can.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of stigma around drug and alcohol too. So people who don't really understand it don't really understand why precious research funding should go that way as well. And I mean, mental health also complains about not getting much funding, but we're kind of like the poorer cousin to mental health. So we have to work really hard to get funding in terms of selling its significance and its relevance. Pete, sorry, I cut you off.
No, no, oh, good. Yeah, look, I absolutely agree with that. I was just going to talk about the other schemes. There's a whole range of other schemes that you could potentially apply for. There's things like Diabetes Australia or the Heart Foundation or cancer councils or cancer institutes. There are those types of schemes where sometimes drug and alcohol research will fit into what the priorities are. We've got a fair amount of funding from New South Wales Health over the years, and I suspect Queensland Health and probably other. No, actually, maybe Queensland Health doesn't have funding. We've had quite a bit for New South Wales Health. The Agency for Clinical Innovation here in New South Wales is another thing. At our university and probably at all universities, we're able to sign up to an email that sends through what the latest grants are available. I just encourage everyone to look at those lists, even if you're not ready to apply for anything now, but just kind of get the feel for what it is that come up, what's available, and then think creatively around how your project or how yours might fit into one of those other schemes. It doesn't really matter where the money's coming from. If you can secure some money, run your pilot study or start your trial or whatever, you'll be on your way. In terms of the second question, what's the difference between a grant and a fellowship? Not necessarily a super clear distinction. A fellowship is usually funds that go to the individual for them to do their own projects. So it typically covers their salary, but also has some project funds that they can use for whatever their project might be. As part of a grant, like a CRE or whatever the grant might be, there might be fellowships that are built into it, or there might be postdoc opportunities, or there might be those types of things funded as part of it. What I think is really neat about a fellowship, if people are thinking about applying them for themselves, it's a chance for you to lead your own project. Like it's a chance for you to get your own funding and kind of help to choose your path, make your own destiny, that type of thing. So they're really helpful. There's a level of prestige with getting them, but just practically they're really helpful for getting your career moving.
Yeah, just with regards to funding, you're probably all aware that tobacco funding, you're not allowed. I don't think a university would allow you to apply for tobacco funding, but you can still get money from like alcohol and gambling and pharmaceutical companies. And if you accept the funding from those, you do have to declare it on your CV and in publications and that. So it's a bit of a personal choice. You have to declare it for a 7-year period, and I chose not to get that funding myself, but a PhD student of mine early on did apply for, and I was a CI. I was in charge of the grant. It was Australian Medical Association. It was a brewer's grant. I didn't understand the whole complication of that. Anyway, for 7 years, I had to declare that I had alcohol funding. So be careful when you do look at these grants. Look at who's the money coming from, and do you want that money, and do you want to be associated with that funding body? It's becoming a big area in the addictions field generally.
Yeah, that's a great thing to keep in mind, definitely. And keeping in mind that, you're kind of applying generally against people from very different areas that might be more kind of socially acceptable or desirable for research. So developing that hook, yeah, I've heard time and time again is really important. So just a reminder to everyone to pop in any questions you have in the chat, but I might just keep going in the absence of questions at the moment. So I guess really fundamentally, how would you go about developing an idea for a research grant? Just kind of first steps.
Yeah, wow, that's a big thing. I found it really helpful to have people like Amanda Baker, who's here on the senior colleagues who could help me develop up ideas and think about what might be possible. I found it really tricky, particularly at the beginning of my career, to think about what a grant might look like, what's feasible, how do you fund it, how does a funding body reflect on that, and having people like Amanda, another person, Frank Dean, I would often go to them and sort of workshop ideas and think through different options. It's kind of what Amanda was leading to when she was talking before. I think you try to pass the pub test. You're trying to write a grant that if you told anyone, your friends or family or people around, that this is what you're doing, most people could see some value or some sense in what it is. And so I think that's part of the art, is doing something that sounds sensible enough that panels will read it and think, yeah, this is useful. But like Amanda's the genius around this. What are your thoughts, Amanda?
I thanks. I've never been called a genius before, but I'll take that. I did work as a clinician 10 years before I went into research, and so I did all of my grant writing was clinically informed. So whether you're a clinician or a public health expert, I think you have to follow your interests and your hearts and where you see the gaps, and you have to feel fairly passionate about that area. So because you often have to apply, many times to get that grant. So it is important that you feel, that it's an important area that you're working in and you believe in what you're doing, I think.
So
Yeah, I
perhaps,
think sorry, go Nina.
no, yeah, go ahead, Leanne.
I was just going to say, like, it's a big challenge to go, oh, I finished my PhD, now I'm going to write a grant, come up with a big idea, and often your PhD will guide what your first grant might be based on. So I guess you don't need to come up with a whole new thing, but I guess you're thinking about the foundation skills you've got, like so what Amanda was saying about being a clinician, having clinical experience, and seeing what works and doesn't work in the field and what the clinicians are complaining about that they don't know enough about, etc. So I think you've got to be quite strategic. As an ECA, you can't come out and go, I've got a great idea, here it is, and expect to get it funded. I wish it was like that, but it's not. You have to get a job. So get a job, which isn't as hard as everyone makes out. I have not come across any unemployed people with PhDs for quite some time that have had anything to do with this field. There are a lot of jobs in our field. Try and get a job with the team you want to work with and learn from. So be strategic about who you apply to work with, what the area of research is. And if you're lucky, you might get that opportunity. So I got lucky when I finished my PhD. A level B research fellow position came up at Origin and it had 3 years of funding. I was lucky, and it was in substance use and comorbidity. So, but it was very different to my PhD. My PhD was on cannabis and psychosis. But luckily, I was a clinician and it was a clinical role. So that's when I started doing treatment research. So I think you just got to be strategic and agile and look at what the opportunities are and make the most of them, but don't keep doing your PhD forever. It's done. Move forward. You can learn from it and build on it, but don't make that, your only focus, because good luck finding a job that's going to support that. Most people's first role out of finishing a PhD is working on project funding, which means your job is delivering on that project. It doesn't mean you get to think about what I'm going to do research on or write a fellowship. You won't have time. You'll be too busy. And that's the reality. And that's what we all went through. But you've got to be strategic within that role, embed research for you within that project and build from there. So it can be done, but there's no fairy god person out there that's going to go, wow, great idea. Here's $2 million. You've got to kind of work it up and build it up. So, but it does happen. It's not impossible. I'm still here. I've been doing this for 23 years. So,
Mm. Yeah, so being a bit kind of, being able to slot into different areas of research within a team that you're interested in working with and building your connections there and going from there, developing your kind of ideas, I guess is what I'm getting from everyone is a good way to go about it.
yeah.
We've got a great question from our audience asking what makes a good idea. So when you are creating a grant, do you create a specific idea and then find a available grant opportunity to apply for, or do you find a grant call and then develop something to fit that call?
But for me, it's usually you get a good idea or, get into a new area of some sort or one that hardly any research has been conducted in, and then you look for grant opportunities. And once you've got that idea, then you notice funding, bodies advertising things, and then you can apply. Yeah, but good ideas. That's one of the things that I had written down. What is it that you need for a good grant is a good idea. You have to argue it well, and you need a really capable team as well.
Mm.
And you want to be able to work well with that team. You want to be able to disagree amicably. You want to be able to, work across time together. You want to actually be motivated by each other. So it's good to start developing relationships with your colleagues now who are on the same level as you, and those more senior colleagues as well.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that I had, being early career researchers in kind of the PhD space or, a few years out. What is the best way to kind of create those relationships? So you can kind of create it with people who are maybe other ECRs or HDRs. Um, is it worth kind of reaching out to other more senior researchers that perhaps aren't within your immediate team, or what do you think we should do?
So it was no coincidence that my PhD marker, one of them was Amanda Baker, and the other one was a psychosis professor in the UK. My big plan was to go and work in the UK for a while and then come back, but then I'd already been there. Anyway, I changed my mind, and then I didn't end up like that. It wasn't until a couple of years later that I kind of reapproached Amanda again about becoming a mentor at a conference, and she was very kind and lovely and said, I didn't ask her straight out. Got to know her a bit first, but and Amanda is a great exemplar of mentoring people from all over, cross discipline, cross institution. You don't have to work for her. She will kind of mentor people. So I guess it's about find people like Amanda, who will give you opportunities and invite you to go to presentations. I remember she shared a hotel room with me once in Lisbon. Poor woman, because I couldn't afford the
Oh,
accommodation. I think that was on bipolar disorder or something, that one. Anyway, yeah, so I think you've got to find your people. I mean, when I started working at Origin, there were some nice people and some not so nice people there, and some not nice people will crush you if you reach out to them. But then there's nice people that will support and work with you as best they can. So it's just you've got to find your people, essentially. Because yeah, and the ones that and eventually you'll find that you'll want to keep working with the ones that you enjoy working with that are nice people and genuine and know a good idea when they hear it and also know when to give up on a good idea if it's just not happening and are brave enough to tell you that.
Yeah. So find supportive mentors, supportive supervisors, build
Yeah.
a team. Um, so I guess another question that we had, as people who have had lots of success with your grants and who have reviewed other grants, what are perhaps the top three things that a successful grant might have, or something that you would be like, yeah, this deserves to be funded?
I think that it's a good idea. It makes sense. In our field, the world will be better for having done this study. Maybe not curing cancer, but you're progressing the field. There's some value to it. I think is part of it. For the type of research that we tend to do, like that, there's value for the kind of community organizations or the health services. Like there's actual value there. I think is a big part. Making sure that the project's feasible that's something that just sticks out to me when I'm reviewing any grants. And I think it's because we work in this super messy area of drug and alcohol research that you kind of appreciate how things can fall apart and how different parts might be difficult. So I'm always looking at feasibility. Is it
Mm.
possible? The team thing I think is part of the game, and so you're trying to put together a team that has the skills and the whatnot that can actually, and so that's a really important, it's a big part of the rankings or the ratings when grants are being reviewed, is the team and who's there together.
Mm. And when we talk about the team, is it kind of the impact of the team? So I think as HC, ECs, we've heard a lot about the term impact, and that it's important. But could one of you just quickly tell us what is impact and how important is it? And how do we build it?
So I think with the team, particularly for those nationally competitive grants, you're looking for people with expertise in different areas. It might be health economics, it might be statistics, it might be clinical psychology, like having experts around that. In terms of the team, lived experience is increasingly really important on projects. Gender balance is really important on projects. Having early career researchers and mid-career research, having people at different levels is really important. I think historically maybe that wasn't the case for lots of those areas, but those things are increasingly really important now. So what was your actual question?
Yeah, no, it's great to hear that, all of these things are being considered nowadays. I just wanted to ask impact. How important
Oh,
is
sure.
impact of the team?
Yeah, so I guess there's a million different definitions of impact, but I guess it's this idea that whatever the research is that you've done, it's had a result. It's done something, and maybe it's helped move the field forward. So you've had some really highly cited papers that are clearly influencing different things. Maybe the work is having really important clinical implications, that you've developed some intervention and it's actually being used, and it's shaping things. So it's there's different ways that impact can be looked at, particularly across different disciplines. But it's the idea that it's done something. It's tricky if you're an early career researcher, you've just finished your PhD, to have had much impact, because impact takes time. But I think what you're trying to signal is that your work will potentially have impact, and then hopefully after you've been in the field for a while, you can look back and see you've done things that have made a difference.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
Leanne's work with Lives Live Well, like such a great example of impact.
So there's knowledge impact. So when you're writing a emerging leadership fellowship, there's knowledge impact, which is, well, this is going to be a test. Like you're not just the number of publications you have, but their impact in terms of how much they've been cited, and the thing called field weighted citations that somehow take a whole bunch of other stuff apart from the number into account. Don't ask me to explain it. Um, so there's impact in terms of the publications you've had, and its knowledge contribution is seen through publications, guidelines, being cited in policy, I mean, your publications and stuff being cited in policy, um, things like that. And then there's health impact, which is kind of the uptake of what you've done, so the implementation translation side. It's a bit harder to show that because there's not really key metrics around it. So yeah, so they're different types of impact. And then there's social impact, which I do not understand for the life of me, how you would demonstrate that. I think there's a health economics one. This is NHMRC land. So, but yeah, most of what we do is knowledge and health. But it
Mm.
seems to be to get to health impact, you've got to be really showing real uptake, which is hard to show evidence for, essentially, which is what you've got to do in these fellowship applications. But they all kind of morph together. But when you do apply, I think I haven't applied for a couple of years now, but you have to say whether you're going for knowledge or health or social or health economics. I think is still the case. So you do have to pick one. But most people say just stick to knowledge to start with. But then as Pete was saying, if to get a high impact publication, it either needs to have a lot of citations in its first year, or it can take 5 to 10 years for it to get to a healthy level that would be seen as impactful. So it's really hard to do that as an ECR, which is why people are using things like downloads from journal pages, views, things like that. It's just anything you can find to show that people are reading and looking at your work is really is impact. And there's a lot more, people are a bit more um, accepting with ECRs that you need to be kind of looking at it's beyond actual journal article citations, it's broader than that.
It has changed over the years. Impact never used to be a big thing. And a lot of my research just was like randomized controlled trials of, say, an intervention, and I'd show something that worked, but it was up to people to read the articles and for psychology to, adopt something in a traditional sort of academic sense. But nowadays, you really have to conduct your trials alongside or with an existing um, service, say it like we've done with Pete Quitline and Salvation Army and Leanne Lives Lived Well and others. And so you often use actual clinicians who are in the facility in the service, and then you can say that that was then adopted based on the results, and that organization treats 20,000 people a year or whatever. So it's become, in a sense, you have to develop interventions which may be less, say, for clinical psychologists, but more for existing services. So it's changed quite a lot because they don't give you any money for dissemination. They want to know what your impact is, but they don't fund impact. So it changes the way you do your research.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
try and build it into our projects now from the start. So we're doing a big randomized control trial of a loneliness intervention. Else Lady. We're only sort of halfway through in terms of recruitment of participants, but we're starting to train organizations in the intervention so they can continue and use it. So we're kind of thinking earlier, how do we get these things into the world?
Yeah, most people are just doing implementation effectiveness trials now. So that's when you really go in and you really train the clinicians who are already working in the organization to deliver the intervention. And you look at, oh, Nina, what does REAIM stand for again?
Reach, effectiveness, adoption, implementation, and maintenance. There we
Yeah.
go. Got them all.
And then there's all the new, which I haven't done. I've collaborated with a few people, but I don't even know what some of these, leapfrog trials are and
Yeah.
whatever new designs. So you don't have to wait for outcomes. You sort of put different things into place and you go with the strongest results earlier. I don't fully understand all the new designs, but that's certainly, I think, an appealing way to go so that you're not spending years flogging a dead horse and you find two dead horses and then apply for, more funding 5 years later.
I've had some great questions come through in the chat. Just asking about, for early career researchers, what's a great way for us to get our names out there, our publications out there? I've had a specific question about LinkedIn. Is LinkedIn a good option, or maybe having your Google Scholar profile or ResearchGate or any other kind of one of those research media platforms? What do you think is the best way, I guess, to get our names out there and to start building that impact?
TikTok was big for a while, but then you know who bought it, and now no one uses it. So it's kind of shifted to LinkedIn. So, yeah, apparently that's the way to disseminate information about, but you need to be posting quite frequently. And I haven't updated my profile since 2011, so mine is terrible. And probably my hair in the picture is as well. So, yeah, it's LinkedIn apparently, but it's also blatant self-promotion and I've got a really low threshold for nausea, so I find it very hard to be blatantly self-promoting, but that seems to work. Um, so putting yourself out there, posting about yourself constantly, yuck, but apparently that's how you do it. Has anyone got
I
any
don't,
on LinkedIn? Yeah.
yeah, look, I find LinkedIn really helpful. All I really ever post is if we're trying to recruit someone or if we've got a paper out, I'll just put the abstract and the link to that paper. But that's where I kind of get the most reach. That's where I'll kind of get emails from colleagues or old students or whatever. So I find that really helpful. I think in Australia in the drug and alcohol treatment sector, I think going to ABSAD each year is a really good thing to do. Presenting, it's a relatively small field, and so just think about cultivating those relationships. Shoot emails off to people, have Zoom meetings with different people if you'd like to. Think about your relationships in this group. Like there'll be people in this group who'll be your colleagues for the rest of your life if you stay in this field. So yeah,
Mhm.
the LinkedIn's and Twitters and whatever are helpful, and I would certainly do them, and definitely get a Google Scholar page and make sure that that's up to date and that's clear. But I think personally as well.
Yeah, and I think join the ECR committees, say with APSAD or with the
Yeah.
CRE or whatever, really, and that's good for your CV as well, but it really gets your name out to the people who it's important, for them to know, and you start establishing networks.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And this group as well, I guess, is a good option too. So yeah, it sounds like even though LinkedIn might feel a bit cringy for us at times, it is a great way to kind of get your research out there, I suppose, amongst other ways, of course. Um, I guess another question, and it kind of goes on, Leanne, from what you said about, you've got your PhD research, and you don't necessarily need to kind of stick with that for the long term. I guess as a early career researcher, if you are finishing your PhD with your group, you go to work with another group that might also delay your impact because it will, delay your publication and, getting cited and all that jazz. What do you think might be the best way to account for that if you're writing a fellowship application or if you're writing your impact statement for research grants, as some of them require?
Oh, so are you sort of talking about how to take it into account for your
Yeah, like the research gap, I guess, in
I
your
don't know.
career.
I really don't know anything about this part of it because the career disruption stuff. But I think you can count moving labs as a career disruption. So for you, for instance, you went over to Canada for it ended up being longer than anticipated due to COVID, but you moved around a bit over there. So you
Mm.
found a way to use that to account for, because if you, even though it was a great experience for you in your skill development, if you're moving from one group to another, and it's not like you moved around a lot either, but even those small jumps in a couple of years, it does affect your traction. And
Yeah.
if you're going for emerging leadership and HMRC grants, time is really important. What's the time frame on EL1s now? Is it 5 years?
It's 5 years, but you can kind of argue it down, but you need to be within 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that 5 years goes pretty quick. So, yeah, so yeah, and I mean, I don't think people need to go on some pilgrimage after they finish their PhD, but I think people should still have a choice about what they do. If they want to do that, they should be able to. And then if people want to stay in the same lab forever and work with the same people forever, they should be able to do that too. And there are pros and cons to both options. Either option can be to your advantage. It just depends on the context and the opportunities that you have. But you've got to make your own opportunities. If you see one, you've got to ask for it. No one's going to remember you and go, oh, we should really put Nina on this. You've got to be in their face reminding them about what you did and help being there and kind of staying in touch. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I'm not answering your question at all, sorry, but I think it's the pathway to, it's, you just got to see where you end up.
Yeah.
You can make
I
a
think
decision
you
about
do
what,
have to, I've never used it either, but I have been on various grant panels where people, put in about their special circumstances, and it is considered.
Yeah.
So, go for it if you can, because it can be a make or break thing. And, many people have very hard circumstances that, that's what it's there for. But, if it's just been, something that does delay you a little bit. But if you are aware of being delayed, I think you should always have something on the go, like with your mates, sort of be part of systematic reviews or whatever, even if you're in a different team and it takes you 6 months to adjust, keep working with, whoever you're working on, make sure you're reviewing the papers and contributing to that systematic review or whatever while you're still finishing that paper from the last team and you're starting out the next one. You've really got to have, your leadership papers, the filler papers, and then your new team sort of papers. You've got to be spinning all those plates at the same time.
Mm. So try, yeah, maintain those collaborative works across
Yeah.
everywhere that you've
Yeah,
been.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
use it
And
to
you
your
can keep,
advantage.
yeah, you can keep those going for many years and be of mutual benefit to you.
Cool. Um, I guess another thing, and this is throwing it back to the funding schemes. So we talked about the NHMRC, ARC as being the major ones. And then there's, the smaller ones that are maybe state-based. And then maybe again, you have ones that are university-based or maybe even CRE-based. How is it helpful to go for those grants? Do they look, good on applications for those bigger grants for the grant schemes?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah. Even like my first grant, my first grants, sorry, were travel grants. So mainly because I like to travel, but the bonus was it was a grant and that your name was on it and it was on your CV. So, um, but then, even an early, you can go for College of Problems of Drug Dependence, Early Career Research Award, and they have travel awards as well. They all count as like little mini grants. So that they're your stepping stones. And then so like a $10,000 early career research grant might be the next one. Um, as we all know, things are a bit tight at the moment, so there's less of those around at the university level. So things like the Mo CRE ones are a really good option because there's not a lot of great options available at the moment. But hopefully that'll turn around and some of those things will start to come back. But yeah, you've got to take stepping stones. So, and as I said before, if you can find a way to put something for you in something that you're working on that you can lead, then you're working on it and you're getting data for yourself and you're going to lead that paper. That's as good as getting a grant. It's a
On,
gift.
yeah, sorry, Leanne, go on.
I was just saying it's a gift there for the taking. Yeah.
On fellowship grant review panels, like the early ones, I really look for small grants. 'Cause, obviously they might only be a few $1,000s. If someone's got two or three of those, that puts them streets ahead of someone who hasn't. Prizes, like even if it's poster prizes or any sort of prize, it gives them esteem over the other people in the scheme. So when you're applying for fellowships, you really have to, it's about the person really rather than the project. And you really have to stand out in terms of grants, prizes, publications, and prestige in terms of whether you've been on committees or, been recognised in some sort of way, because it's the only way that people who don't know you can make that judgment about you compared to someone else.
And you just chip away at all of those things. If like there's grants at the moment in the CRE, I'm sure there's like awards and things within your respective universities. Part of it's just putting your hand up and putting in an application and seeing how it goes. I've certainly sat on university panels where there haven't been enough applications for awards or there haven't been enough applications for grants or projects. And I presume some people didn't apply because they didn't think they would be competitive. Just go for those types of things. Just sort of chip away at it, and you'll start to get a few. And once you get a few, they help support the next applications. It's rolls ahead.
I've
Mm.
had awards where it's been made known to me that I was the only applicant, and that's a bit embarrassing. But it's on the paper, on your CV, and no one else knows that you were the only applicant that year for this prestigious award. So, you've just got to go for it, and it's really, it really goes against my grain, but you have to have these things to make yourself stand out.
I mean, even
Mm.
on APSAD, when I was president, we'd have years where whole categories had no applicants.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
was between 2021 and 2020, whatever it was, four maybe. So
Mm.
yeah, go
And,
for
Yeah.
it.
and so if you're not successful one year, put it in the next year. Like just kind of
Yeah.
get used to the goofiness
And
of
no
this
one's
field.
going to judge you for it. You know,
Yeah.
if you harass them enough, they'll eventually give in. Yeah. But they do matter. I know it's gross and vomit worthy, but they do matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
They do matter. It's about your esteem. And the way I justified it to myself was if you feel passionate about the area that you work in and you want funding for that area, and fellowships come with additional project funding often, by putting yourself, forward and arguing on your strengths, you're actually arguing for that population that you're trying to service. So it's if you can think outside of yourself onto the fact that it's selling your area of research, it really helps you do it, and you sell yourself as hard as you can.
Mm. I will take this opportunity to just plug again. We've got the pilot grants closing for the Mosieri in a couple of weeks' time. We're going to have best poster and best paper presentations as well. So apply for that later in the year, and the enabling grants. So, just within the Mosieri, there's a bunch of things that you could apply for that'll look great on your CV. Um, we have a question as well. Leanne, you said it's important to find nice, supportive supervisor or mentor. Do you have any tips on how to find these people, or is it pure luck? Can you cold email somebody, who's senior in the field, or is it approaching them more at conferences? What do you think?
I mean, look in your immediate environment first, the people around you, and then, and then they can connect you with others. But yeah, I mean, you can sort of, if you go to, I know it's hard and expensive to get to conferences, but when you go to a conference and you see someone there, you can get a gauge of how open and friendly they are. And I would just go up to them and say hi, and introduce yourself and where you're from and what you're interested in. Flatter them a little, tell them how great they are. It always helps. Um, and then said you'd really like the opportunity to maybe work with them someday or something like that. Or if you've got an idea, spread, ask them about something or ask them about something they're doing, and you've got a common interest, go there. Um, and most people are just more than happy to talk to people.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
It's a pretty nice field. There's good people that work in our field. So yeah, reaching out. I think anyone on this call right now, I think we'd all be happy to talk to anyone else on this call or introduce anyone to anyone. So if there's someone you didn't know and we had a connection with them, we would certainly help introduce or do any of those types of things. So I kind of jumping back to something that Leanne said before, just let people know what you're interested in and what your ambitions are and keep reminding people of what you want to do and where you want to get in your career, and then people will start kind of looking out for opportunities for you on your behalf.
but it doesn't happen instantly either. So if it doesn't happen instantly, don't be disappointed. So it's just about, I met with a professor in Sydney when we were running some colleges that I've wanted to work with for years, and we sat there and spoke for 2 hours, but couldn't find anything to work on together. So we're going to keep trying to think about it. So it's just about finding that opportunity. But like letting them know that you're interested. So they're thinking, if they're putting a grant in on something and they think, oh, they need someone with substance use expertise or maybe some specific skill you developed during your PhD, they'll think of you, and then that's your in. I mean, I think I got my track record in grants by people putting me on their grants. And I mean, I did some work too, but you've got to, you're not just, you need to be a AI on grants and then like become a CI on grants and then eventually maybe lead one. It's a process. The good thing about NHMRC grants now is that being an AI, you can see in the system, so it comes up. It used to be if you're an AI, you'd never be mentioned again, kind of thing. But now the actual Sapphire system shows you're an AI, so that counts. It always did count, but now it's actually there to be seen, which is really helpful. And don't forget about DECRAs either. DECRAs are, if you've got a kind of a behavior focus or have a theory or an experiment you want to run, DECRAs are, I've seen people I've reviewed DECRAs and I think, sometimes they're quite easy to get, sometimes they're quite hard to get, but um, I'm quite surprised at what's funded sometimes. So give it a go. It's just got to have it's got to meet that ARC criteria for inclusion is the main thing. But then I've seen projects get funded that were clearly health and RCTs and that didn't meet any of the criteria get funded. So I don't know what's going on there, but
Just with regards to what gets funded and what doesn't, sometimes really, really, really good applications don't get funded because it boils down to basically, this sounds really silly, but they haven't proofread it properly and they've cut and pasted a paragraph from an existing grant and it's got different numbers in it, say, than what the actual, you know, grant is calling for. And so I've been on a panel where people have said, oh, they only want to recruit like 200. And I said, oh, no, it's 500. They've accidentally put this in there. But if it's not clear, it's almost like the grant's out of the water
Mhm.
then. So you can have really good grants, a great team, and it hasn't been, you know, you've got to have the time to just, in that last few days before, read it from go to woe and make sure it's all,
Yeah.
every word, you've got to
That's
read it all.
the consistency in the writing.
Mm,
You've got to be consistent with how you're describing the grant, but also if it's written beautifully, um, it's much more likely to get funded.
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah. So never underestimate the power of proofreading and reading again if you can stomach it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just such a shame to see really good ideas
mm,
not funded and less good ideas funded. And that's what happens. And people go, well, how did that get funded? And you're not allowed to really talk about it. Um, but that's how less good ideas get funded. The great ideas weren't well written.
Yeah, I've seen that happen on panels as well. People have just said, I just don't really understand what they're doing, and it's a great idea, but it's just unclear.
mm.
There's errors in it.
And I guess that kind of leads into my next question, and we've touched upon it a little bit. But I guess rejection is very commonplace in all the grants that you apply for. It's going to happen again and again. What are some tips that you may have in kind of keeping us going? What are good ways to keep yourselves going when you do receive a rejection? And, how do you identify when it's time to maybe pivot from an idea or from an application that you had in mind and maybe pursue something else?
I just tell myself you got to be in it to win it, and you shouldn't expect to win it, but if you're not in it, you won't win it. So that's how I keep myself going. But it is tough because rejection is more common than success. Um, and that's true, unfortunately. So you've just got to find a way, and that's just for grants mainly. Papers, you can normally get a paper published somewhere, no matter how many times it gets rejected. So although review number two is pretty synonymous with being not very nice. But yeah, I think and it depends on the grant. Like MRFF grants are a great example. Like there's a whole scheme and they might fund 3 grants, you
Mm.
know. It's just going, well, the odds are pretty low. I don't know. I think it's enjoy it when you get them, and when you don't get them, pivot to see if you can put it in somewhere else. Because once you've written it, you can submit it in other grant rounds, if it's eligible and you can make it fit. You just got to keep trying.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the process. It's the like you'll have many. You have more grants rejected than you'll ever get grants in your career, and you've just got to keep putting them in. It's nice when you've got a team around you who will send you emails or take you out for cake or something when you haven't got some. So supporting each other during those moments. I have to convince myself when I'm writing a grant that this is the best grant in the world, and then once I've submitted it, I try and just I'm not going to get that and start to kind of resolve to not getting it. And then hopefully there's some pleasant surprise. It's the
Mm.
journey. That's what you're signing up for is a life of rejection, but some really great things will happen along the way as well.
There is research into the like retest reliability of scores for NH and MRC panels, and it's not very high. So um, just keep submitting. So for one of my last quitline grants, it was rated as like unfundable the first year. Then it got into the fundable range, and then I got it the third year with minimal change. You've just got to, if you've got the space, like, you're allowed only a certain number of grants, keep resubmitting, and it's likely that you'll eventually be successful.
So
Yeah.
keep at it, keep going, surround yourself with a supportive network that might take you out for cake.
You might
Um,
get a beast on your,
yeah,
rejections.
yeah. And it's a bit of luck as well who you get to review, I guess, your applications. So we're coming to the end. So just very quickly, the last question I wanted to ask you all, if you were in our shoes and starting your career again today in 2026, what's the first thing you would focus on building? You know, would it be building your impact, your publications? Would it be going for those maybe most area or university grants? Would it be doing all of these things? What do you think would be the best way forward for us?
I think publications are still really important. So I'd be trying to get your publications out from your PhD or wherever you are. I would just take opportunities. I'd keep my eyes as wide open as I could. I'd probably be spending time on LinkedIn. I'd be going to conferences. I'd just be kind of keeping my eyes wide and just taking opportunities when they came up, saying yes to things.
Leanne and Amanda, final thoughts?
I think as a clinician, look, this isn't the thing to say in a research forum, but I never wanted to work in like private practice, but now that Medicare covers psychology, I'm not sure I would ever go into research again. It's a very hard road to hoe, and I think it's becoming very competitive, more so, than it was when I first started. I think you have to be very, very dedicated to it. If you can get a position that's a continuing appointment in a university rather than a fellowship, even though I did get continuing fellowships, I was part of a more golden age, I think. And I think you have to really consider overall what you want your quality of life to be. And, you know, you can have a good research career if you're a teaching academic and you put aside the time. So I think about trying to get one of those sort of jobs, but they're becoming increasingly rare. If you're a clinician who's interested in research, if you can get a job in a specialist unit that does research as well, and you can have a career that way, that would be fantastic. But you've got to be out there getting the prizes, writing the publications. If you're not sort of prepared to do that, I'd sort of say take an easier road.
Leanne?
I'd probably try and prioritize. I mean, I did a thesis by what were the old ones called?
Monograph?
The big ones. So I had to write all my PhD papers after finishing. So, that was my first couple of years gone because I was working full time. And so I was writing those papers up most weeknights. So it is a hard slog. But I enjoy what I do. I like the research process. I like coming up with ideas and building them up. And you can start with working with like honors or masters or PhD students to build up areas, and then you're growing a team around that. I really enjoy that. Um, and there is a lot of freedom. Like no one's really watching you 9 to 5. So that's good as well, and you get to travel a fair bit. So there's a lot of good bits, but I think, yeah, I'd probably write more. I'd probably do less RCTs. Um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you've
All
got to have
right.
the passion for it. It's not an easy road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to love it. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you to our panel members for joining us today, for your wise insights. It's been really helpful, I'm sure, for everybody. Just wrapping up, everybody.